here tonight. My name is Jennifer Jago DeVries. I'm the Executive Director here at the Crossing Arts. This is Cup North, our third session of this wonderful show curated by this guy, Nick DeVries, local potter, connected with most of the folks we know here. So he's a wonderful asset to our community. He's our gallery committee chair, my spouse. And so because he's a potter, he knows most of the potters around in our area here.
Yeah, sorry.
So you see all these pots, and if pottery is somewhat new to you, you might have some questions about how a potter did this or that, how it's fired, the clay bodies, the glazes, etc. This man knows the answers to your questions. So I'm going to turn it over to him. Thank you again for being here tonight and supporting potters near and far. And yeah, we'll get this guy started here.
Well, first off, thank you to everybody for coming out. This is a great turnout. Every year that I've put this on or helped put this on, I always figure I'll walk in the door and it'll be empty and no one will be here. So thank you for making that 3 years in a row not the case. Since the show isn't about me, I'm mostly going to just kind of talk about some things here first and then open up for questions about any of this stuff. We've got some potters in the house, so they might check my math. So jump in. If I know Sandra, you will. So
raise your hand if you're one of the artists. All right. Thank you.
Oh, wait. I just want to start kind of with Crossing Arts. One of the kind of guiding ethos of Crossing Arts is art is for everyone. That sentiment is a bit of what has always kind of driven the curation of Cup North. We talk as potters about the ceramics community a lot. It's sort of a word that is thrown out, and that's because it really is. It ranges across the country, across states. It is a real community. Part of that is because pottery is just very heavy. And you need other people to help you carry it around or pick things up or haul things to your studio sometime. Wood kilns need a team of people to fire. There's some wood fire people in the house. There's the Cannonball crew here too a little bit from Casey Hochhalter's kiln. You just need extra hands. Like I said, things are heavy. Sometimes equipment and space is hard to come by. So the reality is, as potters, we kind of rely on each other. And so that community spirit is really a big part of our ethos. And, you know, one of the things that this show, I've always wanted it to kind of mirror in the pottery community is, another potter, raise your hand. Is the fact that the ceramics community is knitted together through all sorts of different levels and places and styles and approaches. It isn't just a bunch of well-established potters sitting on their high horse, kind of telling people what's good. The real pottery community goes all the way down to the student level, all the way to the community center, and is built through just, it overlaps, it meshes, people know people, and it is really, it just has to operate that way because of the nature of our material, of the equipment, and the access to kilns or space. So the show has always been a kind of a representation of many approaches, many pots, many colors, many styles, many firing techniques, but also kind of always like many places. There are full-time potters here exhibiting in the show. There are professional potters that aren't full-time potters, that might be teachers or educators, but they are kind of established as full-time potters. There are people emerging, right? They're little, I don't know if they're out of the chrysalis yet or they're whatever. They're into some kind of a stage where they're starting out, or they're finding their voice, or they're really trying to figure out the material, because this material is a pain in the butt, top to bottom. So the show really represents that broad spectrum. A couple of years ago, I was teaching in a workshop in Wisconsin, And there was one of my students, he was new to pots, and he was, not from the pottery world, and it was kind of this burgeoning, exciting hobby for him. And he just kind of asked this question. He's like, so what is the deal with potters? They just tell you. They're like, here's my recipes, and like, here's how I do it, and here's what you do, and here's how you fire kilns, and what is up with that? Because in my profession, he was saying, when you find something, when you figure something out, you hoard it, you guard it, so you can publish, and you can be the person who has that knowledge to like put it upon the world. And I didn't have a whole lot to say. I just said that's just how it is. It's kind of the nature of the beast. So, ceramics and pottery people who are in this show there are all sorts of people making pots in all sorts of ways, in all sorts of places, with all sorts of clays. So Cup North has just, always been kind of holding that ethos as part of its reason for it to exist. Cup shows this isn't a new idea, didn't come up with it. They happen somebody did one day, one person maybe at one time was like, we should do a cup show, and now everybody does it. But that's kind of how I wanted to make it kind of crossing arts, put our little stamp on it. Art is for everybody. These cups are for everybody too. So with that, I'll open it up to questions. I know I was kind of buzzing around, like I'm full of energy right now, so if you can't tell. But if you have any questions about cups maybe you picked out, pots that you're thinking about, just a little pitch here. This is a great way to support this organization and the potters who put their time and energy into this work. So, questions, thoughts, concerns, comments?
How many potters are in the show this year?
40.
Is it always 40?
No, first year was it's partly because
Are you 40?
I'm a little much. No, I'm not. I'll be 47 soon. No, first year I think was 30, and then 35 and 40. I just kind of keep asking people and more people, and we're swapping people out. People are kind of coming and going. There's some mainstays. Like I won't ever kick myself out, maybe, but yeah, 40 potters, 200 pots in the house. So yeah, lots of pots.
Can the other artists say their names so we can put a face?
Sure. Do we want to start with the questioner?
I'm Sandra Shaughnessy. I have Clay House Pottery in Otter Tail, Minnesota.
J.D. Jorgensen, Main Price Studio.
I'm Megan Jorgensen. We have a studio together, Main Price Studio.
You guys are like thin. Yeah, their pots are here. I'm Nick DeVries. My pots are over there, right above the Jorgensens. Let's go around this way. Any potters? Sally?
Sally Odlands, newish to the pottery scene, so 3 years in, loving it. Happy to be here.
Where are we? Well, we got a
Joe over here.
Joe.
Way over there.
Way over here. And then behind Joe, we've got.
Bush Holden, Latter-day Clay, up there.
And right behind you.
Oh, yeah, there's more.
There's more.
Kelsey Anderson.
Kelsey's pots are here. Kelsey's been working in my studio for 4 years now or so.
I think so.
On and off, yeah. So,
Laura Costa, Moreland Pottery right behind Nick, they're the blue on the bottom.
we've got another one over here.
Dan Devine, got pieces over there to the right.
Dan's always cooking.
Equal up lakes.
Degree Round, the Pottery Keep, kind of near Pine City.
Henriette. But if
Near-
you say.
Close to Henriette, it's actually the Pigman Township, but it's the other country.
And they're right behind here.
Oh, okay.
Is that it? Is that the potters in the house?
I think so.
Great. Any other burning questions about how any of this is made or done or
Just an observation,
it just gets better than ever. Every year is better than ever.
Paid actor.
Nick, can you tell me about the variety of types of clay that's used for these? Are they all made out of the same thing?
No, there's a pretty broad variety. I think we can kind of group clays into 3 different buckets if we're talking about just the clay, and we usually talk about low fire, mid fire, and high fire. Of course, that spectrum goes from the blends all the way through, and where one stops and where one starts is, you could start an argument maybe here tonight with people. But let's take Will Swanson's work very classically right here. High fire gas reduction. That means he's firing with gas. He's firing to cone 10, which is roughly 2,400 degrees, and he's firing in a reduction atmosphere, meaning he's pulling oxygen out of the atmosphere, so the chemistry of his glazes interacts with that flame that's looking for oxygen. Okay, so that's cone 10. That's kind of your hottest. I don't know how hot do you guys fire? 10? You're not like dropping 12 on purpose?
Not on purpose.
Okay, so we're talking cones, 10, 12. Cones are how we check temperature. Cones are little chunks of material. They look like little cones and they melt at specific times. We can look into a kiln and figure out what temperature it is. Other kilns have computers on them, typically not wood kilns, but some gas kilns, most electric kilns now. So that's high fire. Megan and JD's work is high fire as well. This is not Ryan Myers. This is Joanna Craw from the Twin Cities area. These are just very classically mid-range clays that fire in that mid-range temperature. Now there's also a difference in the color. So we've got stonewares, kind of classic stonewares. You're going to have some iron in there. They're going to look a little darker. This is a white stoneware, still a stoneware, but it doesn't have as much iron. So that's a little bit of a difference, but you can have that difference at different temperatures as well. But those are mid-range clay bodies, so that's that mid-range. We're talking about 2,200 degrees. And then I know we have some lower fire stuff in the house. All the way over here, we have, I'm not going to touch any ones that have a red dot on them. But we have Katie Miller and Karin Kramer. Fargo, Duluth, opposite sides of the state there. These are more kind of classically low fire earthenware clays. Terracottas are kind of your classic clays like that. Lots of iron in these and other materials that allow them to become functional at quite a bit lower temperatures. We're talking 04 if we want to talk cones, but no one knows what that means. So we're talking in the 1800, 1900 degree range. So when you think about the ranges, we're talking about 1800 to 2400. It doesn't seem like a lot of range, but it really affects what your materials are going to do. So, good question. Paid actor.
Just curious. That part of my question was, when I think about clay, I think of, like an elementary or high school, middle school classroom, right? You've got those big chunks of that terracotta color.
Yeah, it's usually red.
Yeah.
Maybe gritty.
But a lot of the things that I see here don't look like they originated in that.
A lot of it's not uncommon now to see white stonewares and also more iron-bearing red clays or dark clays. They're pretty easy to work with. They're forgiving. They're easy to attach handles and stuff. Some people, also the other kind of clay that would be in the house that I know for sure is porcelain. So I throw with some porcelain, but it's not as common of a clay because it's a little more finicky. It's a little trickier. Humble brag. There it is.
So does all the clay start out looking like that brown chunk?
Nope. If it's like porcelain comes out of the bag white.
Okay.
This stuff, the earthenware comes out looking cream.
Okay.
This looks red. Now they do fire differently and they can change in the kiln depending on what your kiln is doing. That's more specific to say, I used the term when I was talking about Will's work, a reduction atmosphere. Reduction firing simply means we've got some kind of a flame, could be from gas or wood, and we are reducing the oxygen in the atmosphere of the kiln. Meaning now that flame or that atmosphere is hungry for oxygen, right? So we know that flame needs fuel and oxygen to burn. So that flame is going to look for oxygen and it's going to find it in the clay and in the glaze. And it's going to pull oxygen atoms out of the clay and the glaze at different times of the firing, and it's going to affect the color. So stonewares, red stonewares might get redder because iron, as its oxygen atoms leave, becomes more potent of a colorant. So that's one really good example of like an actual chemical reaction.
Can you talk a little bit about the glazes and the coloring and whatnot that you can apply
Sure.
to the exterior?
Yeah, huge range in here. Right behind me, I'll just, Will's right here, so I'm going to talk about him. Kind of classic cone 10 glazes. So a lot of these glazes, like this dark, this would be a classic Tomoku glaze. It's got iron in it. Fe2, O3. It's iron oxide. It's the stuff that rusts off of steel and that we find in the ground. That's just a very classic colorant. The glaze does it all. He takes these, he dips them, he wipes off the foot, and he fires them. Going down a level here, we've got Ryan Ball. These are, the colors come from more often stains. So it's a little more analogous to paint in a way, where you know kind of what you're going to get. They're fired in an electric kiln. They are stable. They're not going to change in the firing. But it's still very much a glaze that has a color. Laura's work here has a combination of stuff. Maybe are you using underglaze here?
Yes.
Yes. And then the outline is?
Underglaze.
Underglaze, yeah. So underglaze, this is it's a material you can purchase from suppliers that acts like paint as well, and you fire that on. So you maybe have even more control with what your colors are going to look like. And then inside and over here, there's more of that classic glaze that has the color in it. Anthony here is using oxides to make these patterns and details. You've got pots like Joe's here that on the inside here, there is a glaze. Gloss glaze, very classic gloss glaze. It's just formulated to be glossy and have this dark interior. It's got iron in it, but the exterior has no glaze at all. There are a number of different potters in the space. JD and Megan have some pieces. Casey's pieces up here. I think Marie has some work that's unglazed. This is just ash from a wood kiln that's being deposited on this and fired and melted. Ash deposits from wood typically melt at what we would call cone 7, but no one knows what cone 7 is, so we're melting those at like 2250, 2260. That's when those ash deposits are going to melt and create basically a glaze and different effects on the surface of the pot.
Anything that's being used for eating or needs a glaze on the inside?
Not technically.
Okay.
The good thing we have today at our behest are good detergents and hot water, right? Which cut through and eat through most stuff that's going to affect the bacteria or anything that's going to happen in your glaze or in your clay body if you're going to use it to drink. Typically, it's fairly standard that you're going to see a liner glaze on the inside of something. But we do have. What do you have in here, JD? Anything? Nothing. This is only clay, 100% in and out. The magic of clay, if you've got your clay correctly formulated or you know what it is, and you fire it to maturity, meaning you get to the temperature it's supposed to fire, it becomes vitreous. Meaning you can fill this with water, put it on a table, and it's not going to seep through at all. It will evaporate eventually, but I could fill this with water, wine, beer, juice, or whatever, and even without glaze, the clay itself has become sealed. Do we want to talk about clay particles?
What kind of glaze is used on like the matte finish mugs that don't have like the shiny lid?
So the matte finish mugs, mugs like Desi's here, some of Sandra's have a matte finish, all of Joanna's have a matte finish, you'll see them around. It is just the chemistry with your glaze that creates the matte finish or the gloss finish. So there's two ways we talk typically about matte finishes. One is something like what Joanna is doing here. This is what we would call a true matte. Fired at any temperature, this is just going to be a matte glaze. It's because there's like a crystalline structure that builds on the surface, almost like frost on a window pane. But like you just know it's always going to be like that. The other version is like Michael Shale has some back here, and this guy here, actually these are true mattes, so I'll just use Michael's. This is more of what we would call a crystalline matte or satin. This needs some slow cooling. So if this cools really fast, this will be gloss. But since this kiln is really well insulated and it cools really slowly, these crystals form at specific temperatures. You can do that in an electric kiln with a computer that can like hold things at specific temperatures and then slowly cool. That's what I do with some of my work. And it's fairly common these days. Butch, you do some slow cooling with your work?
I do.
Yeah. So if you see Butch's work, his pots are over here. You'll see these little crystals, combination of this matte, and then there's some gloss here, but this is what we would call a crystalline matte. So, yeah.
Would anything like if you let the clay sit out for a while, would anything happen to it then?
Like finished stuff here?
No, like before you even fire it.
If you let it sit out like in the rain?
No, like just like out for like a really long time.
No, it would just be clay. I mean, over time, like a pot that's not fired to bisque temperature, which is kind of our first firing. We fire, not everybody does. Marie once fires like a crazy bandit. But typically when we make a pot, we fire it once and it becomes, we call it bisqueware at that point in time. It's porous, it will soak in glaze, it will pack material together, but we can handle it. We can toss it around, we can juggle it, but we can't make it back into clay anymore at that point in time. It's a ceramic material. So once it's bisqued, it's good to go. I would say like a pot that sat for a century in a windowsill without being fired might have a problem, but I don't know. Should we test it?
Will it retain, can it still hold water at that point?
At the bisque temperature?
Yeah, if it's just fired.
It won't. It can hold it, but instantly, much like a terracotta pot you have on your porch, if you fill it full of water, you'll see that seep through. In planters, that's a what do you call it? A trait, not a bug. A feature, not a bug. So the pot soaks up the water and then slowly remoisturizes it back in. Bisqueware, if you fill your bisqueware up, yeah, you'll see it soak through, and then it would soak through and evaporate. So it's not it's not vitreous yet. Some of those ceramic particles have started to fuse, but they haven't fused all the way. So it's porous, and it has this capillary action like a sponge to suck up the water to kind of smash those glaze particles together. So they stick, and we can fire them. And it works perfect every time. Anything else?
I got a quick.
Go for it.
How often do you open up the kiln and find something broken?
Broken, not a ton. Disasters do happen. Broken. If you open up the kiln and something's broken, we would probably say it dunted, meaning it cooled too quickly, or like sometimes, like if you've glazed the interior of a pot and the exterior is raw. I don't know, Laura, I know some of these are a little bit raw, if you've ever had problems with that, but there can be, glaze has a tension. It's like putting a coat, like a candy coat over it kind of, and it has a tension, and if your tension with your clay body is different, expands or contracts at a different rate, then that glaze can crack that pot as it dries, and if it's not on the inside and the outside, that can exacerbate that. More often than not, what happens is you open up a kiln and there are pinholes and blisters, or you put your glaze on too heavy and it ran off the pot onto the shelf and ruined a bunch of shelves and or a bunch of pots. Raise your hand, potters, if you've ever had any of those problems. If there's anybody in here that doesn't raise their hand, then I am. So, yeah, it's a mess. I don't know why we do it.
Can you tell us how some of the pots become more square versus round?
Sure. So the potter's wheel is the tool that a lot of people here use to make nice, simple, round pots. But not everybody here uses a potter's wheel, and not everybody here kind of stops there. So a good example of some really square pots are Ernest Miller's pots. He's a maker from Minneapolis. These are thrown on a potter's wheel, but then he squares them off. And they're thrown fairly heavily. And then once they dry up a little bit, we call it leather hard. I always talk about it like a cheese ratio. So I like to get things to Parmesan, where they're kind of stiff. If you're Gouda, that's not good. You want to let it dry a little more. But he's taking bent blades or rasps and rasping these edges to create these square pots. Some folks in the house, like Kate Barat's, these are all hand-built pinch pots. They're built, every one of these lines here, one of these layers is a coil, and she pinches those coils up and then adds a new coil. So while they're not square, they're formed a little differently. Katie Miller does some slip casting. So her pots are made from molds, so anything that has changes or alterations that we would think from the original cylinder are, for her, those are slip cast. JD, slip cast, everything here. Yep. So JD, he's pouring clay, like liquid slip clay into molds, and they're drying. So there's a range. Kelsey, her work is hand-built N square. So this is slabs that she's rolling into texture, and then it's all slabs and then pulling some handles for them. So the how to alter a pot or turn it into something that's not a cylinder, it varies quite a bit.
I got another question. Can we talk about a couple of these, I don't know what you want to call them, they look like they've been drawn on. How do things like that one and then the ones that were right behind you, the flowers, are those...
So these here?
Yeah, are those essentially just sort of
Anthony's.
painted?
Or Anthony's. Yeah, there's a range. Dan, what are you doing? What's this one?
Yeah, I kind of pair it with my screen printing background, so it's on newsprint, similar actually to Katie Miller's, and then using underglazes, but then I'm also using a subscreen with those underglazes to then achieve.
So that's kind of the last layer that goes on it?
It goes on that leather hard stage, and then attaching just before that disc fire.
So screen printing and transferring is what's going on here. Anthony is using hand brushwork for decoration. Katie Miller's work up front also is either a combination of screen print or she's laying down color fields on a piece of paper with either underglaze or colored clays and then layering some clay over that and then attaching that. You can see little paper creases and stuff on her work. Laura, this is all hand done, sort of brushwork. Kip's work here, some of these are fire on decals. She does all the designs by hand. She used to paint every single one of them by hand and then almost like had to tie up her wrists forever. But so these are fire on decals, so she'll do these designs and then send them in and get them printed from a supplier. And then once the pots are fired, she puts those on and fires those on. So just like, the range of approaches here is pretty wild. And it is something I kind of try to shoot for, to have a lot of representation in terms of clays, firing techniques, where, the kind of subject matter that people have, so.
You want to talk about Derek's carving right behind you?
No, he's not here. Yeah, Derek's work here is really classic, what we would call sgraffito. So while it looks like it may have been one of those other approaches, like a decal, he's not cheating like all those other potters are. He's doing this by hand. Sorry. Dig. So he's laying down a field of color, in this case, this kind of black here, and then he's scratching into this and doing these designs by hand. And then it's fired and it leaves that color. So that's typically what we would call slip, really wet clay. He's got some colorant in there, and then this is more of a classic glaze. So Derek, super talented. So all of these here are that sgraffito technique.
Any other questions?
I'm kind of curious about the white and the black polka dot kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, this is Chili. Zachary Chilson. I just met Zachary this summer at the Minnesota Pottery Festival in Hutchinson. I would say he's kind of an emerging, coming out of, learning. What he's doing here is taking this and texturing and then laying over another little ring of clay and then probably using some slip or some underglaze here to color this in. Possibly a lot of like painting in and wiping off and painting, painstaking stupidity that we all do. And then this is just kind of classically mid-range fired. So he's got this nice matte and gloss combination, kind of some contrast there, and then some contrasting texture as well. Any other questions? I covered a lot of stuff. We don't want to talk about particles? No? Okay. No one wants to hear about that.
Do you have to know a lot about chemistry to be able to do this?
You do and you don't.
It sounds like you do.
It helps to know some, and it helps to have like base level. I've kind of scaffolded up over the years. Like at first it was like, I don't know any of the stuff. Like what is silica? What does any of this mean? But you can just, once somebody tells you like what a formulation, let's say for a glaze recipe is, you can just go find the names of those things, mix them together and have no idea what the chemistry is and fire them. But if you have some of those flaws, those blisters, or problems with those, you might need a little extra information. So I find it fascinating the more I learn just to really understand it fully, to understand the chemistry. But it's not like totally necessary, but it can be helpful. But that goes back to the community thing, because some people in the ceramics community, like they came out of maybe an institution or they made a body of work and then they just transfer all the way over to all I do is test glazes, and I'm like, that's my deal. They run glaze workshops and publish books on glazes, and they no longer make a whole lot of pots, but they're still a huge part of the community. Same thing goes with kiln builders or clay body people. So yeah. I can go all night. That covers a lot. Well, thank you, everybody. Back to browsing.